What's up, everyone? So AMD has just released Adrenalin 21.6.1, and the highlight apparently is Fidelity FX Super Resolution support for select titles, and the only title that's officially optimized according to their Learn More website is Godfall. There's supposed to be a list. There was a leak of, a longer list of games and developers that have pledged support, but officially up to double the frame rate in select games. Footnote 1, and the only game listed here is Godfall. So I don't even know why they would try to announce FSR launch when it's just one game. That's just abysmally poor marketing. They could have, even posted the leak, because there's websites that have posted the leaked list of games with early support, but yeah, it's just there's not even a link here to see supported games, which they should have added by now, given there are people that are paid to update this stuff. But anyway, so if you ignore it, as in it's not really an FSR driver, it doesn't really do much. The more noticeable changes are in the tuning tab. They've added Smart Access Memory Switch, so you can see it's enabled here. And one thing to note before you install these drivers, take screenshots of your tuning profiles if you do have any custom fan profiles, because of this switch, which has basically invalidated previous tuning profiles. That's what I believe it's done, because normally when you do a full install over the top of the previous drivers, your tuning profiles do not get erased. But for some reason, this driver erased all of mine. Luckily, I had screenshots saved, so I could just re-enter all my settings again. But I recommend that. So take screenshots. Don't just back up your profiles, because I'm not sure if they're compatible from the previous driver because of this extra Smart Access Memory switch. That's probably something to do with why they erased the previous profiles. And they've changed the UI a little bit. So you can see when I go to load, this was empty and I had to re-enter an undervolt. And I did back this one up in another folder, but if they change the UI again, obviously it's better off to just have screenshots, because that way you know that it's going to be compatible if you re-enter it and save it again. And just save a new profile with every driver update, especially if they change stuff. And as far as stability is concerned, I'm recording with ReLive right now, and it's running fine. Everything else, like all the other settings under, graphics, display, all of that carried over. I didn't have to re-enter anything else. It was only the tuning profiles that got erased. So, if you're concerned about that stuff you've disabled, all of that was the same, but as a full install over the top, not a factory reset. I don't do factory resets because that tends to cause me more grief than because it resets everything. You lose all the hotkeys you disabled, all the settings that you disable get reset if you do the factory reset option, which is self-explanatory, but it's kind of annoying when there's a ton of different options you might have set that you've customized, and then you have them all erased. So as you can see here, the in-game overlay disabled. This is how I have mine set up, and this is what's been the most stable between every single driver update. Having all this stuff disabled just tends to work the best for me. And you can just see under here, graphics, I keep all this fancy stuff enabled. The only thing I use is Radeon image sharpening at 80%, and that's just personal preference for my screen resolution. I could probably be fine with 50 or 60%, whatever. I just like it on 80. I don't know. Not really important. And yeah, you can see the settings here. Basically everything disabled. So yeah, that's the most noticeable change, is just that switch for Smart Access Memory. So now we know that there's some kind of driver level switch that's been flicked. And this could be good or bad. I don't know yet. I haven't tested. I've just installed these literally, and I'm just testing right now. And that's what I'm sharing this video for. And what else? If I go to the patch notes, I'll link these down in the comments below. For some reason, the shortcut doesn't work for release notes. You have to manually put in Radeon 21.6.1 to get it to come up. And you can just see the extra stuff here. Known issues. It's all similar stuff that's been there before. And they fixed a few things with ray tracing. The user experience program causing CPU usage spikes has been apparently fixed. And lower than expected performance in Destiny 2 has been fixed. And the cleanup utility with the chipset, I don't know. I don't use that part. And yeah. So yeah, you can see this down in the comments. And now we're going to get to testing just to make sure these drivers are really stable, and to see if there's any performance loss. Because we don't know what this Smart Access Memory switch actually does. Is it only for Smart Access Memory, optimized games? Is it going to provide no boost? Is it going to hurt performance? I don't know. I decided, because of this Smart Access Memory switch, I was going to drop Heaven, but Heaven is an older DirectX 11 benchmark, and I want to keep it included now, at least for this run, simply because of the Smart Access Memory switch. I want to see if between this driver and the previous driver, if SAM enabled through the drivers is detrimental to performance in an older benchmark, and then we'll see what it does in Superposition and in Metro Exodus vanilla, not the RT version. So yeah, we're going to test all of that, and I've already copied a little bit of it over, like ready for testing. Copy this. I'm not going to test every single setting, like every resolution and things like that, just my standard, whatever I tested last time. So this here, like that. So this is what I'll be testing if you want to stick around. And the main reason I record all this is just to show that nothing's been doctored. If any crashes happen, if the applications crash because of the drivers, you're going to see it crash in the recording. Or this recording is going to get uploaded cut short because the recording failed for whatever reason. I will literally upload a failed recording if the drivers are not stable with the exact same settings I had on the previous drivers. So here we go. There's no sound in this because something to do with Heaven and YouTube copyright, like they're trying to copyright mark the music in Heaven, so I just avoid playing that sound now. So yeah, just skip ahead if you don't want to watch a boring benchmark with no music. Maybe they fixed it by now, like it could have just been like a false positive. But yeah, we'll run this and then we'll go to Superposition and Metro after. I'm actually really curious if this is going to cause any performance differences, because I know that SAM enabled can cause problems. In other tests I've seen online, it can cause a slight performance degradation, or they could have messed with something else. They could have messed with the voltage tuning and frequency curve, and that would cause sporadic, suboptimal performance. So the reason I fast forward this is just because when you hit benchmark, if you don't flick through the scenes, you'll get a really low minimum FPS for no reason. So you can see here, the minimum was 53 when just starting, and if I just exit the benchmark and run it again, it goes up to 82 and 74, but 20 FPS higher just from restarting the benchmark as well. So let's see what happens. Hopefully it scores the same. That FPS is looking a bit low though, 85 at 1920 by 1080 Ultra Extreme. I don't know why it's that low, because the average is supposed to be up at 100 plus, like 140. So that's a bit more normal, but yeah, as it's zooming in, this FPS is a little bit concerning. It's only around 100. I could have sworn it was higher. I have not changed anything else. A slight variation in settings. I bumped my undervolt up a tiny bit because I was getting low load instability in Path of Exile. So basically, even though the GPU was rock stable in Superposition, in intensive games, Escape from Tarkov, and all of that, when playing a less intensive game with an FPS cap that's only boosting to around 2000 megahertz, the voltage and frequency curve was not stable in Path of Exile, and I'd get more random crashes. And so I bumped that a bit just to, and because they've changed it, you don't have a middle curve on the voltage to change anymore. I had to bump the max to try to improve the curve, and that stopped the crashing. So it's not really relevant to benchmark tools because it'll only improve performance. It's not going to hurt anything basically by having it 10 MV higher. But you can see here the previous setting was 1100 MV instead of 1115 MV. So 5 MV higher, sorry. It's like the tiniest bump, 15 MV higher. It's the tiniest bump, but yeah, it fixed that if you're playing a less intensive game and you get crashing and you're undervolted, try bumping your voltage because it could be that issue that I'm talking about. And as well, I'm just running the memory at stock now to avoid any well, just to be more of a direct comparison. If someone gets a 6700 XT, they want something more direct to compare to, because not everyone can get 2100 megahertz on MEM. It's better to just run it default so that anyone else can run default and compare. So we might get a small FPS drop off because of that memory difference, but otherwise it should be pretty close. And if it's not, we're going to blame the drivers, basically. Because I was recording, recording was on in the previous test, 1080p Ultra Extreme. There's no reason there should be a large discrepancy, but it looks like there might be. I mean, look at this. The minimum is 49, so that's, within margin of error. The max is 186, which is a fair bit lower for whatever reason. And the FPS, which is this average, this top blue number, the very top reading, 102, and the previous was 146. I don't think it's going to climb up to 146 between scene 19 and 26. I mean, you can see here it gets really high at some of these scenes, but not high enough to add 40 to the average. The average is very low for some reason. I'm not going to run this multiple times though. I mean, I'm just doing exactly like I tested all the previous drivers, and if for some reason the FPS is lower, we can put it down to a possible driver issue. I might do further testing off camera to see if it's ReLive related, but yeah, otherwise this is just what you see is what you get kind of thing. And I really doubt the 2100 megahertz mem would boost the average from 110 to 146. That doesn't make sense. I think I've actually done stock memory testing too. Like further up, I did stock benchmarks with the GPU memory at default somewhere. Well, RX 5700 here. Undervolt 2600 megahertz at 1100 MV. This was at stock memory for the 6700 XT, and it was scoring 145 within margin of error. So yeah, okay, that's abnormal. That's abnormally low. So unfortunately, I'd have to turn SAM off and rerun the benchmark, and I don't know if that'll affect ReLive recording, so I'm going to do that off camera, because I did try turning the switch by itself. Like, I'll show you what I mean. I did try turning it off just when I first installed the driver, just to see what it would say or what it would do, if it was just like a simple toggle, or if it would come up with a pop-up. And if you try to do it, it says warning, UI might restart, and a few applications might restart, so that might crash the ReLive recording. So this is the SAM on, SAM enabled result. So I might even just add this here, SAM enabled, so that I can do some offline testing. And if I can, like, for example, if I test with recording disabled or with SAM disabled, and I can find that that's what's causing the performance difference, then I'll post that in the comments below on this video. I'll update you guys on what's going on. So 113.8, that's not looking good. If you're playing older DirectX 11 titles and you get low performance on this new driver, it could be this. It could be the driver. And I'm not running any bloatware. It's just Afterburner. It's the same exact stuff. I'm not running anything extracurricular type of apps. It's all exactly the same as what I normally run. I haven't installed anything fancy. But yeah, that's a significant drop off. 2867, and the previous driver, 146 average. Even the max is down a fair bit, considerably, but the minimum's all right. So I don't know. It could be a SAM thing, but we'll test with Superposition and different APIs, different game engines, whatever. We'll see if the same thing happens again. So I'll close that now. If I can just remember where I have Metro Exodus installed. There we go. Benchmark tool. So I have to. I'll do Superposition last. So yeah, Metro Exodus is on DirectX 12, so that's why we have different tests. So we can see if this SAM enabled thing is having any issue. And that's the exact settings I was testing on last time. Yeah, you can see it there. So we're expecting 77 FPS and then 102 and 52, and we're going to see if this driver does good or bad. Let's quickly save this. Okay, so it's looking like within margin of error, possibly a slight boost in performance for Metro Exodus. But I'm not, I'm not doing like 3 runs of each in a super controlled environment. It's the same system, it's the same everything else, but ambience is slightly different. That shouldn't affect the boost clocks though, because my temperature is still pretty good. But say comparing to previous Exodus runs, like on 21.5.1, it's within margin of error. So you can see here in the tool, quality high, 16 AF. Motion blur low. Yeah, it's all the same. Interesting. So yeah, within margin of error. So Exodus is performing fine on DirectX 12. It might just be a DirectX 11 issue with SAM enabled, or I don't think ReLive could be the issue because ReLive's running for this and it's fine. And now lastly, we'll run Superposition and see what happens there. At the very least, they're stable. It hasn't crashed. And I'm running these are pretty intensive benchmarks. If you've got instability, normally Superposition definitely crashes the GPU. So 4K optimized is what we're going with. Recording on. SAM enabled. Oh, I'm gonna get OCD. I should just put SAM enabled at the top, but whatever. It'll help later. Performance, yeah, just 4K optimized. That's all I need to change, I think. Go. Alrighty. So the 4K optimized 67.67. Maybe within margin of error. It seems a little bit down, but it's kind of hard with this type of thing. Oh, the max is also down. Everything's down by even 5 FPS. Oh no, it's not. I'm looking at it wrong. Sorry, with recording on, I was looking at recording off. Okay, we're looking at here, guys. Okay, so it's within margin of error. That's fine. It's like within 1 or 2 FPS. And what else? What's this score? 9048. I mean, the overall score is down a little bit. But, I mean, if you look at the FPS, that's like within 1 FPS. Why does the score vary so much between, like, it's like 30 points just for a few decimal, like within a decimal. Anyway, at least it's running fine. So, you know, more intensive, GPU intensive, oh wait, which DirectX is this using? I don't know which API I was using. Maybe it says it somewhere in here. Doesn't. I'll have to Google that later. But anyway, at least those two benchmarks seem to be fine. So that means ReLive's probably fine, and we might have either a driver or SAM enabled issue with Heaven, and I'll test that offline later. So anyway, that's it for the vid, and I'll let you guys know in the comments what happens, because what I'm going to do first is I'm going to turn recording off, rerun the benchmark with SAM still enabled, just ReLive off to see if SAM and ReLive is something to do with DirectX 11, and then I'm going to try disabling SAM, running the benchmark again with recording off, and then running with recording on, and you know, comparing it. Actually, I'll do it with recording on for both testing, for the second test, just to see if I can get this kind of result again with SAM disabled to see what happens. Anyway, and the system has been restarted, obviously, after installing the drivers. I rebooted. I did the same exact procedure as with the last 10 driver updates. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.